Hey family, I am excited as we continue in our small group series as we're walking through the Sermon on the Mount. And today we get to come to this space here where Jesus issues a challenge to us here in Matthew 7. He's issuing a challenge. Now he's taught us so many things as he's been preaching. He's taught us how to be the salt of the earth. He's taught us how to pray. He's taught us not to judge. He's taught us about adultery. He's taught us about murder. And so he's taught us how to actually live our lives in a way that brings him glory. And so now he's coming to a place after he has taught us, after we have built knowledge and gained information. Now we're in a place where we have to make a decision. He's challenging us to decide, how will we build our life? And so as we look at here in Matthew 7, verses 24 through 27, we look at these few verses, we see this beautiful image of what it looks like to build your life on the Lord. Starting at verse 24, it reads like this: "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house. But it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell." And listen to this. It says, "And great was the fall of it." Jesus is painting this beautiful, simple, but serious image here. He's showing us a contrast on what it looks like to build your life on him and what it looks like to build your life on this world. And so he gives us this image. There are two builders, two houses. One storm comes. But the interesting thing is these houses look identical. These builders are pretty much the same, but there are two outcomes after the storm. But both houses, both builders, they experienced the same wind, the same rain, the same floods. But one house crumbled and the other house stood strong. You see, the issue wasn't in what they heard. They both heard what was instructed to build a house. They both heard that. They both actually built the house. They both did that. But one built his house on the rock, and the other built his house on the sand. We are told, Jesus tells us, we ought to build our house, our lives on the rock. And because one built his house on the rock, he thrived. The other built his house on the sand, he crumbled. The issue wasn't in what they heard. The issue wasn't in the fact that they built a house. The issue was what they built their house on, and that was the foundation. You see, foundations are very important, but we rarely ever talk about them. When we invite people to our homes, we want them to see the furniture. We want them to see the wall colors. We want them to see our drapes, our curtains. We want them to see how beautiful and grand our kitchens are. We want people to see how great the landscaping is, but we rarely take people outside and say, "Look at this foundation. Look how beautiful it is. Look how strong it is." We don't say that. No, we don't do that because we don't think about the foundation. But Jesus is arguing here that that's actually the most important piece. When you're building anything, the foundation is the most important piece. And so we see here in this text, we see here what it looks like to build your house on the rock and what it looks like to build your house on the sand. And Jesus, he calls one wise and one foolish. If you ever read through the Proverbs and you constantly see this contrast of wisdom and foolishness. Living the way of God is wise. Living the way of the world is foolish. And so we read that over and over again in the Proverbs. And this is what Jesus is doing here. He's saying the person who is building their life on the Word, the person who's building their life on Jesus, the person who's actually walking with the Lord is the one that's actually strong. Because when storms come, because they will come, when they come, the one who built their life on the rock, that is Jesus, will stand. I've been a Christian since the age of 7. I remember surrendering to the Lord at the age of 7. But I wasn't always walking with him. I would say I surrendered to Jesus as my Lord and Savior, but my foundation wasn't always built on the Lord. And I went through a season. I went through a season where storms came, where there were lies said about me. There were various things happening with employment. There were so many things happening in the world, and I felt the pressure. But I realized, although it felt like I was falling, I was crumbling, I did not fold. I did not go through because I believe, I know for sure, I didn't crumble. I didn't succumb to all the weight because I built my life on Christ. Now, I have a buddy. I'm not trying to be a hero of this story at all. Jesus is the hero. But I have a buddy who I grew up with, and he looked great on the outside. He went to a great school, college. He ended up marrying this beautiful woman. They had beautiful children. But then some things started happening to him at work, where it was found out that he was in finance. It was found out that he was being dishonest on a few things, so he lost his job. And he realized that the marriage wasn't really built on love or anything, but it was the fact that he was wealthy, and his wife left him. He then also lost his children, and so everything that he kind of built up was gone. And I remember in high school having conversations with him about the Lord. He never received the Lord. And that friend, well, that buddy, he ended up taking his life. And I'm sorry, this is I know, striking scenario. And I bring that up just because I want to share this contrast. I'm not communicating that everyone who takes their life doesn't walk with the Lord. That's not what I'm communicating. But what I am saying is that this person built his life on the wrong things. He built his life on his career. He built his life on having this picture perfect family. He built his life on money. And when all that crumbled, he felt like he had nothing to live for. And we see that here. We see that because it says here, the last phrase in verse 24, it says, and great was the fall of it. Jesus is saying, when you build your life on the rock, no matter really what comes to you, no matter if it feels like your life is falling apart, because you built your life on Jesus, you will make it through. He promises that. But when you build your life on sand, on the frivolous things of this world, you will fail. It's not that's a promise as well. And we think about it. What is sand? Sand. I think about sand. I love going to the beach. I love taking my family to the beach. My son enjoys crawling around on the sand. My daughter is like, what is this? What am I walking my feet on? So she wants me to carry her as we're walking around the beach because it doesn't feel sturdy. Sand isn't a strong foundation. As you walk on sand, you can feel the sand shifting and sifting. And when the water and tide comes in, you notice that it's even weaker. And this is the picture that Jesus is painting here. When you build your life on sand, you won't thrive. You won't prevail. When you build your life on the things of this world, what this world says is impressive. What this world says will work for you. What this world says, when you build your life on what the world says works, you won't succeed. But when you build your life on Jesus, you will succeed. He promises that. And so I just want you all to remember this as you are connecting in your groups, as you are talking through this. Allow this to be a time where you open up. Don't just simply answer the questions. Actually, dive deeply. That's why we have small groups. That's why we set aside time for us to grow together, because that's the only way we can truly grow is in relationship with one another. And so as you dive into the groups, answer the question. Actually pause and think about it. What are you really building your life on? Are you building your life on the Lord, where you know you will prevail, where you know you will succeed, where you know there is everlasting life, where you know there is triumph on the side that has already won? Or are you building your life on shifting sand, the things of this world that won't last? I want you to reflect on that in your groups. I'm praying for you. I want you to stay encouraged and know that when you build your life on Jesus, you always win.